Everything you think you know about China comes from a story that was repeated so often, it became truth. For an entire generation, the narrative was simple. China is rising. China is efficient. China is inevitable. Politicians warned about it. Corporations bet on it. The world adjusted to it. But what if this story was never complete? What if the real China exists beneath the headlines, hidden behind numbers, scale, and carefully managed images? To understand China's future, we first need to understand the myths we built around it. China's rise is often described as the greatest economic miracle in human history. Hundreds of millions lifted out of poverty, megacities rising where farmland once stood, a country transforming itself in a single generation. And all of this happened while the West was watching. Factories moved east, supply chains followed, consumers benefited, China became indispensable. But this miracle didn't happen in isolation. It happened inside a system built elsewhere. Western capital financed it. Western markets absorbed it. Western technology powered it. China didn't replace the global order. It mastered how to operate within it. From the outside, scale looks like strength. The largest factories, the biggest workforce, the fastest construction. But scale can hide weakness. China became the world's factory. But factories assemble more than they invent. The most valuable parts of modern technology, chips, software, advanced machinery, remain controlled by others. China could build almost everything, except the things that mattered most. This dependence was invisible to consumers, but it was impossible to ignore in Beijing. By the early 2010s, Chinese leadership understood a dangerous truth. Economic growth without technological control is fragile. A single cutoff could paralyze entire industries. This is why Made in China 2025 was born, not as a branding exercise, not as a trade policy, but as a national security doctrine. Semiconductors were not just components. They were leverage, and China didn't have enough of it. China's system excels at coordination. It struggles with chaos. But innovation is chaotic. It requires failure. It requires dissent. It requires freedom to challenge authority. Central planning can build highways. It can build factories. But it cannot command creativity. As surveillance expanded and political control tightened, China's most valuable resource began to leak out: talent. Innovation slowed where it mattered most, at the frontier. The West misunderstood China in two fundamental ways. First, it assumed prosperity would soften power. That growth would produce openness. History offered no such guarantee. Second, the West confused visibility with transparency. China looked modern. It looked efficient, so it was assumed to be stable. But stability enforced is not stability earned. Today, China faces challenges that no narrative can hide. Demographics are turning, debt is rising, global trust is eroding, and technology is no longer neutral. Export controls, sanctions, strategic isolation. The system that once fueled China's rise is now being redesigned without it. China is not collapsing, and it is not unstoppable. It is something far more complex, a nation balancing scale with fragility, control with creativity, ambition with constraint. The future of China will not be decided by myths, either optimistic or fearful. It will be decided by how well it adapts to a world it no longer controls. The greatest danger is not misunderstanding China's strength. It's misunderstanding its nature. Because when nations act on myths, they make catastrophic decisions. China is not the story we were told, and the future will belong not to the loudest narrative, but to the most accurate one. Because accuracy requires discomfort. It requires abandoning simple explanations. It requires admitting that the world is no longer shaped by clear winners and losers. China is neither the unstoppable superpower of propaganda, nor the fragile paper tiger of wishful thinking. It is something far more difficult to understand. For decades, China benefited from a world that believed cooperation would lead to convergence. That trade would create trust. That economic integration would eventually reshape political behavior. That belief defined an era. But that era is over. China learned faster than the system anticipated. It learned how to absorb technology without surrendering control, how to integrate into global markets without becoming dependent on global values, how to speak the language of openness while practicing the logic of insulation. This wasn't deception, it was strategy. And this is where the real misunderstanding begins. The West expected China to change because the system rewarded change. China expected the system to be temporary. To Beijing, globalization was never destiny. It was a phase, a useful one, a profitable one, but ultimately a conditional one. What China seeks is not dominance over others. It seeks immunity. Immunity from foreign pressure. Immunity from technological blackmail. Immunity from the kind of collapse that has haunted its history for centuries. This is why efficiency is sacrificed for redundancy. Why speed is traded for control. Why openness is limited in favor of predictability. These choices look irrational, unless you understand the fear they are designed to prevent. China's greatest anxiety is not invasion. It is internal fracture, a slowing economy, an aging population, a shrinking workforce supporting an expanding state. Each of these pressures compounds the others, and together they create a system that cannot afford instability. This is why dissent is treated not as disagreement, but as risk. Why information is managed rather than debated. Why narrative control is viewed as a form of national defense. To the outside world, this appears brittle. To Beijing, it appears necessary. But necessity comes with trade-offs. Innovation thrives on unpredictability. Breakthroughs emerge from friction. True creativity resists command. And here lies the paradox at the heart of modern China. The tighter the system grips control, the harder it becomes to generate the very innovation it needs to survive. This tension defines China's future more than any external rival. Not America, not Europe, not even technology itself, but the unresolved conflict between control and creativity. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is adjusting. Supply chains are rerouting. Alliances are tightening. Trust is fragmenting along political lines. Technology is no longer just a tool of progress. It is a boundary. Access determines opportunity, restrictions determine trajectory, and neutrality is disappearing. The global system that once amplified China's rise is being rewritten around risk management rather than efficiency. Resilience over speed, security over cost, alignment over scale. These shifts are subtle, but permanent. China is adapting to this reality, not loudly, not dramatically, but methodically, by building parallel systems, by investing in long-term capacity, by preparing for a future where dependence is the greatest vulnerability of all. This does not mean China will fail, and it does not mean China will prevail. It means the age of simple conclusions is over. The greatest mistake now would be to assume inevitability in either direction. History rarely rewards certainty. It rewards adaptability. China's future will not be decided by headlines, or speeches, or economic projections. It will be decided by how effectively it balances control with innovation, security with openness, and ambition with reality. And the world's future will be shaped by how well others understand this balance. Because misunderstanding China does not just distort policy, it distorts the future itself. The real danger is not fear, and it is not optimism. It is complacency built on myths. China is not the past repeating itself, and it is not the future fully formed. It is a system in transition, and transitions are where history is made or broken. The question is no longer who will rise faster or who will fall harder. The question is who understands the moment they are living in. Because in a world defined by complexity, the most dangerous position is thinking you already know the answer.